Hello everyone. A vast ancient library, its shelves stretching into darkness, with a single candle illuminating a complex, circular mandala drawn on a dusty table. Let's be frank with the reality. Our habits and thought patterns are silently holding back our potential. So, before we get comfortable, please take a quick moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. But only if you really love what I do here. Encourage the audience to post their location and local time. And finally, let's end with these exact words. Now, let's turn off the lights. Turn on a fan for some pleasant sound, and begin our journey for tonight. Have you ever felt it? That quiet, persistent hum of dissatisfaction beneath the surface of your daily life. A feeling that you are living a life that is, by all external measures, successful, and yet, internally, feels hollow. You have the job, the relationships, the routine, but there is a sense of being an actor playing a part. Wearing a mask so well crafted that you've almost forgotten the face beneath it. It's the quiet dread of a Sunday evening, the existential ache that hits in the stillness of 3 a.m., the feeling of running on a treadmill, moving faster and faster, but never truly getting anywhere. We live in an age of unprecedented connection, yet we feel more isolated than ever. We have access to infinite information, yet we lack wisdom. We are told to hustle, to optimize, to build our personal brand, to project an image of flawless competence and happiness. But what is the cost of this performance? What happens to the parts of ourselves that don't fit the script? The doubts, the fears, the unacceptable desires, the quiet longings, the creative impulses that we've been told are impractical. We push them down. We repress them. We build a life on the thin crust of what is acceptable, while beneath our feet, a vast volcanic world of our own true nature churns, ignored and unacknowledged. This isn't just a feeling. It's a psychic fragmentation, a slow, quiet tearing of the soul. It manifests as anxiety without a clear cause, a lingering depression, a chronic fatigue that no amount of sleep can cure, a series of self-sabotaging behaviors that leave us baffled and ashamed. We find ourselves in conflicts we don't understand, triggered by people in ways that feel disproportionate and irrational. We feel stuck, haunted by the ghost of a life we could be living, if only we knew how to find the door. But what if that feeling of being lost is not a sign that you are broken, but a call to a deeper journey? What if the very things we have been taught to fear and hide the darkness within us hold the key to our wholeness? What if there was a map, not to a treasure buried in some distant land, but to the vast undiscovered country within your own psyche? Nearly a century ago, one man dared to draw such a map. A man who broke with the intellectual father of his time to chart his own course into the depths of the human soul. His name was Carl Gustav Jung, and his work offers a profound and radical answer to the quiet desperation of our modern age. The question he poses to us is not how to be better, or more successful, or more liked. The question is, how do we become whole? Our modern world, for all its wonders, has a very specific and often superficial answer to the deep ache of the soul. When we feel that inner void, that sense of fragmentation, where do we turn? We are told to look outward. The prevailing wisdom is a gospel of external solutions. We are prescribed productivity hacks, life optimization strategies, and the relentless pursuit of measurable goals. We are taught to treat our own minds like a computer to be debugged, our emotions as inconvenient bugs to be patched or silenced. Feeling anxious, meditate for 10 minutes using an app, but don't ask what the anxiety is trying to tell you. Feeling sad? Reframe your thoughts, practice gratitude, but for heaven's sake, don't dwell in the grief. Feeling angry? Suppress it, control it, because it's unproductive and unprofessional. We have become masters of the persona, the social mask. Social media is the grand stage for this performance. We curate our lives into a highlight reel, a carefully constructed narrative of success, happiness, and adventure. We become our own marketing directors, selling a version of ourselves that is palatable, admirable, and ultimately, incomplete. The persona, as Jung would call it, is the face we show the world, a necessary tool for social navigation. But the danger arises when we mistake the mask for our true face. We become so identified with this polished public self that we lose touch with the complex, messy, and authentic reality within. This external focus extends to our very well-being. The modern approach to mental health, while offering valuable tools, often prioritizes symptom management over deep exploration. It can become another form of repression, a more sophisticated way of silencing the parts of us that are crying out for attention. We learn to manage our anxiety, to cope with our depression, but we are seldom encouraged to ask the terrifyingly profound question: why is this happening? What is this symptom a symbol of? What part of my psyche is being neglected, and what is it trying to communicate to me through this pain? This is the common reality, a world that encourages us to build a strong, impressive facade, while the inner structure crumbles from neglect. We are taught to fear our own depths. We are told that our negative emotions are problems to be solved, not messages to be deciphered. We are conditioned to believe that our value lies in what we project, not in who we truly are. This creates a profound psychic split. We live a one-sided life, championing our conscious, rational, good self, while disowning and repressing everything else. We push our anger, our envy, our laziness, our grief, and even our unexpressed joy and creativity into a dark, invisible bag that we drag behind us everywhere we go. But what is hidden does not disappear. It gathers energy. It forms what Jung called complexes, emotionally charged clusters of memories and impulses that operate autonomously, like little subpersonalities, hijacking our behavior and warping our perceptions. The man who prides himself on his discipline may be unconsciously ruled by a laziness complex, projecting it onto his relaxed colleagues and judging them harshly. The woman who denies her own need for attention may be inexplicably drawn to or repulsed by charismatic figures, never realizing she is seeing a disowned part of herself. This is the trap of the common reality. By focusing only on the light, we give the darkness immense power. By refusing to look within, we become puppets to unseen forces, living a life that is not truly our own. To find the roots of a deeper reality, we must travel back to the turn of the 20th century, to a world teetering on the brink of immense change. In the heart of Europe, a young Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Gustav Jung was beginning a journey that would forever alter our understanding of the mind. Born the son of a pastor who had lost his faith and a mother who claimed to converse with spirits, Jung grew up at the crossroads of logic and mysticism, a tension that would define his life's work. Initially, a protege and chosen heir of the great Sigmund Freud, Jung was a rising star in the new field of psychoanalysis. Their first meeting in Vienna famously lasted for 13 uninterrupted hours. Freud saw in Jung a brilliant mind and the future of his movement. Jung saw in Freud the father figure he had longed for, but a fundamental rift was destined to open. Between them, for Freud, the unconscious was primarily personalis cella, where we store our repressed memories, unacceptable desires, and traumatic experiences, with sexuality as the primary driving force. Jung, through his work at the Bergholzli Hospital with patients suffering from schizophrenia, began to see something more. He noticed that the delusions and hallucinations of his patients often contained bizarre, mythological gods, apocalyptic floods, themes that couldn't possibly have come from their personal life experiences. Where did they come from? This question led Jung to his most radical and controversial departure from Freud. He proposed that beneath the personal unconscious, there exists a second, far deeper layer of the psyche. He called it the collective unconscious. This was not a personal acquisition, not a product of one's own life, but a shared, inherited psychic foundation common to all of humanity. It is, as some have described it, a kind of mental counterpart to DNA, a psychic inheritance passed down from our ancestors. This collective unconscious is a reservoir of all the experiences of our species, a matrix of human potential. It doesn't contain specific memories, but rather universal patterns, themes, and symbols that Jung called archetypes. The archetype of the mother, the hero, the trickster, the wise old man. These are not just characters in stories. They are innate psychic structures, blueprints for experience that shape how we perceive the world, how we react to life's challenges, and how we find meaning. The reason the same myths, fairy tales, and religious motifs appear in cultures across the globe that have had no contact with one another, Jung argued, is because they spring from this same universal, collective source. This idea was revolutionary. It shattered Freud's more contained model of the mind. For Jung, the unconscious was not just a basement for our personal demons, it was a vast, ancient ocean, connecting every single one of us. It was the source not only of our neuroses, but also of our greatest creativity, our deepest spirituality, and our potential for transformation. The break with Freud in 1913 was brutal and absolute, leaving Jung isolated and adrift. He entered a period of profound inner turmoil, a confrontation with the unconscious where he risked his own sanity to explore the very depths he had theorized about. But he emerged from this darkness with the foundational principles of his own school of thought, analytical psychology. He had found the hidden roots, the understanding that our individual struggles are not just personal. They are echoes of ancient, human dramas, played out on the stage of our own lives, drawing their power from the deep, shared well of the collective unconscious. If the collective unconscious is the vast shared territory of the human psyche, what is the purpose of our individual lives? Are we simply puppets of these ancient archetypal forces? Jung's answer to this is perhaps his most profound and hopeful contribution. It is the foundational principle of his entire psychology, the aha moment that reorients our understanding of personal growth. He called it individuation, individuation is the lifelong process of becoming who you were always meant to be. It is the journey of self-realization, the path towards psychological wholeness. Think of an acorn. Within that tiny seed, the entire potential of a mighty oak tree already exists. It doesn't need to be told how to grow. Its destiny is encoded. Within it, individuation is the human equivalent of that natural, innate process. It is the journey of becoming the unique, whole, and indivisible individual that you are. In your innermost essence, this is a radical departure from the common view of self-improvement. The goal of individuation is not to become a better person according to some external standard. It is not about adding new skills or polishing your persona to be more successful or more liked. In fact, it's the opposite. It is a process of stripping away everything that is not you. It means divesting yourself of the false wrappings of the persona, the social masks you wear to fit in, and differentiating yourself from the suggestive unconscious power of the archetypes. It is a journey from being unconsciously driven by collective norms and inner complexes, to becoming a conscious, self-aware, and self-directed being. Jung saw life as divided into two halves. The first half is necessarily focused on the external world. We build our ego, establish our careers, form families, and find our place in society. We adapt to the collective, but then, often around midlife, a shift occurs. The questions change. The pursuit of external success can begin to feel empty. This is the call to the second half of life, the call to individuation. It is a turning inward, a journey to discover the parts of ourselves we have neglected. The ultimate goal of this journey is to bring the ego into a right relationship with a deeper organizing center of the psyche. Jung called this center the self. The self is the archetype of wholeness, the totality of your entire psyche, both conscious and unconscious. It is the inner divine center, the oak tree to your ego's acorn. Before individuation, the ego mistakenly believes it is the center of the universe. It runs the show, clinging to its limited, conscious perspective. The process of individuation is the difficult, humbling, and ultimately liberating process of the ego recognizing that it is not the master of the house. It is a servant, or perhaps a steward, to the far greater wisdom of the self. It is about shifting the center of the personality from the conscious ego to the self. This journey is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole, and wholeness, as Jung insisted, requires embracing all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark, the rational and the irrational, the strength and the vulnerability. It is the courageous path of accepting everything you are, and in doing so, finally becoming yourself. To walk the path of individuation, we must first understand the landscape of the psyche as Jung mapped it. It is a world of dynamic, interacting forces, a kind of inner ecosystem. At the center of our conscious world is the ego. The ego is our sense of I, the command center of our waking life. It organizes our thoughts, feelings, and memories, and is responsible for our sense of identity and continuity. Wrapped around the ego is the persona, the mask we present to the outside world. It's our professional identity, our social role, the good student, the tough boss, the caring friend. The persona is necessary for navigating society. But it becomes a problem when we believe it is all we are. Beneath the surface of consciousness lies the personal unconscious. This is where we store everything from our individual lives that has been forgotten, repressed, or was never strong enough to reach our awareness in the first place. It holds our forgotten childhood memories, our hidden traumas, and our personal complexes, but the journey inward doesn't stop there. The first and most crucial step in individuation is the encounter with the archetype that lives on the border between the personal and the collective. This is the shadow. The shadow is everything about ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. It is the dark side we hide from ourselves and others. It contains our repressed instincts, our socially unacceptable desires, our greed, our rage, our envy. And this is critical. The shadow is not purely evil. It also contains positive qualities that our ego or society has deemed unacceptable. Our healthy aggression, our life-giving spontaneity, our raw creativity, our unexpressed passions. As long as the shadow remains unconscious, we are doomed to project it. We see our own disowned greed in the ambitious colleague, our own repressed anger in the irritable stranger, our own unlived creativity in the artists we admire. Confronting the shadow means withdrawing these projections and having the courage to own these qualities as part of ourselves. It is the most difficult and most necessary moral challenge of the journey. Let's consider a case. Imagine a man, let's call him Arthur, who is known by everyone as impeccably kind and agreeable. He avoids conflict at all costs. This is his persona. But he suffers from chronic anxiety and has dreams of being chased by a violent, raging figure. This figure is his shadow, his own repressed, healthy aggression, because he denies his own capacity for anger and assertiveness. It haunts him from the unconscious. His work is to realize that this monster is a part of him, a source of strength he has disowned. By integrating it, he doesn't become a violent person. He becomes a whole person, capable of setting boundaries and standing up for himself. Deeper still in the unconscious, we encounter the Anima and Animus. The Anima is the unconscious feminine aspect within a man. The Animus is the unconscious masculine aspect within a woman. These are not about gender roles, but about archetypal energies. The Anima connects a man to his capacity for relationship, intuition, and creativity. The Animus connects a woman to her capacity for logic, assertiveness, and focused thought. An unintegrated Anima can lead a man to be moody and sentimental, projecting his ideal woman onto every partner. An unintegrated Animus can make a woman opinionated and argumentative, possessed by rigid, unexamined beliefs. Integrating this inner soul image is the masterpiece of individuation, as it builds the bridge to the deepest layers of the collective unconscious and allows for true psychological balance. Imagine a highly successful lawyer, Maria. She is logical, driven, and brilliant. Her conscious identity is strongly aligned with her Animus. But she feels emotionally barren, and her relationships fail. Her journey might involve, through dreams or active imagination, encountering a neglected, artistic, and emotional part of herself, her inner feminine, and learning to value its wisdom. This integration doesn't make her less logical. It makes her more whole, capable of both fierce intellect and deep connection. The entire process, acknowledging the persona, integrating the shadow, and building a relationship with the anima, or animuses, about healing the splits within the psyche. It is the difficult, courageous work of gathering the lost and rejected parts of ourselves, guided by the ultimate goal of bringing the ego into service of the central, organizing wisdom of the self. Understanding the map of the psyche is one thing. Learning to navigate it is another. Jung did not leave us with abstract theories alone. He provided practical, powerful tools for engaging with the unconscious and fostering the process of individuation. These are not quick fixes, but deep, lifelong practices. The two most important are dream analysis and active imagination. For Jung, dreams are not just random neural firings or simple wish fulfillments, as Freud believed. They are direct, unfiltered communications from the unconscious. They are, as he saw them, a kind of love letter from the self, offering guidance, warnings, and insights that our conscious ego has missed. The language of dreams is not literal, it is symbolic. A dream about your house falling apart is likely not a prediction about your property, but a message about your psychological structure, your inner house, being unstable. The first step is simple, but crucial. Record your dreams. Keep a journal. By your bed and write down everything you can remember upon waking, no matter how strange or nonsensical it seems. Pay attention to the feeling tone. Were you scared, joyful, confused? Then, instead of looking for a generic meaning in a dream dictionary, you engage with the symbols personally. What does a snake mean to you? You can use association. What words, memories, or feelings come to mind? The goal isn't to arrive at a single, neat interpretation, but to build a bridge of understanding between your conscious mind and the rich, symbolic world of your unconscious. While dream analysis is a dialogue with the unconscious in a state of sleep, active imagination is a method for engaging with it while fully awake. Jung considered this his most potent discovery, a way to consciously enter the world of fantasy and interact with the figures within. This is not mere daydreaming. It is a focused, deliberate process. Here's how it works. First, you find a quiet space and center yourself. You might start with a lingering mood or feeling of anxiety, for example, or a striking image from a dream. Let's say you focus on that anxiety. You ask it, what image represents you? You wait, passively but with focused attention, until an image arises from your unconscious. Perhaps it's a small, frightened child huddled in a corner. The second step is to give this image form and begin a dialogue. You could write it out like a script in a journal, paint it, or simply speak to it in your mind's eye. You ask the child, "Who are you? Why are you so afraid?" You listen for the answer, allowing the figure to speak for itself without your conscious ego interfering or directing the conversation. The figure might respond with a memory you had forgotten, or a perspective you had never considered. The third step is the ethical confrontation. The unconscious is primitive. It doesn't operate by our societal moral code. The figure might suggest something destructive or irrational. Your job is not to blindly obey, but to engage with it as a real personality. You must bring your conscious values into the dialogue, creating a synthesis between the conscious and unconscious perspectives. Finally, you must integrate the experience. This means taking the insight from the dialogue and making it concrete in your life. It might be a change in attitude, a new ritual, or a commitment to a different course of action. Active imagination is the art of making the soul stuff real. It is a courageous descent into your own depths, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant, co-creating your own path to wholeness with the unseen forces of your own psyche. The journey of individuation is not a peaceful stroll through a sunlit garden. It is a heroic quest, and like all great myths, it is fraught with peril, challenge, and inevitable obstacles. Jung himself said, "He is no hero who never met the dragon." This journey requires immense courage, for the dragons we must face live within our own psyche. The first and most formidable dragon is, of course, the shadow. To truly confront the shadow is to look at the parts of yourself you have spent a lifetime denying. It means admitting that the arrogance you despise in your boss, the manipulativeness you see in a family member, the laziness you judge in a friend all exist within you. This realization is deeply humbling and often painful. Our ego, which has built its identity on being a good person, fights back with ferocious resistance. It generates shame, guilt, and disgust to prevent us from looking. This is the great battle of the journey. To stop projecting our darkness onto the world, and to take responsibility for it. This is the slaying of the dragon. But in Jungian psychology, you don't just kill the dragon and leave. You must eat it, you must assimilate its power. When you integrate your repressed anger, it doesn't make you a monster. It gives you the power of assertiveness and the ability to protect your boundaries. When you integrate your repressed ambition, it doesn't make you ruthless. It gives you the drive to pursue your true calling. The treasure the dragon guards is always a lost part of your own strength. Another great danger on the path is ego inflation. This often happens after a powerful initial insight or spiritual experience. The ego, having had a glimpse of the vastness of the unconscious, makes a critical mistake. It identifies with it. It thinks, I am the one who is enlightened. I have special knowledge. The person becomes arrogant, preachy, and disconnected from ordinary life. They have been lifted off the ground by the power of the archetype, losing their human footing. The antidote to inflation is humility, the constant remembrance that the ego is not the source of this wisdom, but merely a vessel for it. It is the difference between saying God spoke to me and I am God. The journey also involves long periods of darkness and confusion, what the mystics called the dark night of the soul. This is the descent into the underworld, the belly of the whale. It's a time when the old conscious attitude has died, but the new one has not yet been born. It can feel like a deep depression, a loss of all meaning and direction. This is the most terrifying part of the process, the point where many turn back to the safety of their old familiar life. But it is a necessary stage of dissolution. The old structures must be broken down before a new, more whole personality can be built. It is in this darkness that the seeds of transformation are sown. Overcoming these obstacles is not about willpower or fighting harder. It is about surrender, trust, and a radical form of self-compassion. It requires accepting that you will be uncomfortable, that you will be humbled, and that you will have to let go of who you think you are in order to discover who you truly are. It is the heroic work of choosing consciousness over comfort and wholeness over perfection. As one progresses on the path of individuation, the landscape of the psyche reveals even deeper and more mysterious dimensions. Jung's explorations did not stop with the personal psyche. They pushed into the very nature of reality itself, connecting his psychological insights with the revolutionary discoveries of modern physics and the ancient wisdom of esoteric traditions. Two concepts stand out at this advanced stage: synchronicity and alchemy. Have you ever thought of an old friend you haven't seen in years, only to have them call you that very same day? Or had a dream about a specific, unusual symbol, and then encountered it in the real world shortly after? Jung called these events synchronicity, or meaningful coincidences. These are events connected not by a linear chain of cause and effect, but by meaning. To the rational mind, they are mere chance. But Jung, in collaboration with the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Wolfgang Pauli, proposed something far more radical. He suggested that these events reveal a hidden order in the universe, and a causal connecting principle where the inner world of the psyche and the outer world of matter are not separate, but are two aspects of one and the same reality. This idea finds a stunning parallel in the world of quantum physics. The principle of quantum entanglement shows that two particles can be linked in such a way that what happens to one instantly affects the other, regardless of the distance separating them, a connection that defies classical cause and effect. Jung theorized that psyche and matter are similarly entangled. Synchronicity, then, is a moment when this underlying unity, this unified reality, breaks through into our awareness. It's a wink from the universe, a sign that our inner journey is aligned with the outer world to map the process of this inner transformation. Jung turned to an unlikely source: the obscure, symbolic texts of medieval alchemy. He came to believe that the alchemists, in their quest to turn lead into gold, were not just engaged in primitive chemistry. They were unconsciously projecting a profound psychological process onto matter. The alchemical opus, or great work, was a symbolic roadmap for individuation. The process began with the nigredo, the blackening estate of chaos, depression, and despair, where the old personality is dissolved into the prima materia, the primal matter of the psyche. This is the dark night of the soul. Out of this darkness comes the albedo, the whitening stage of purification and illumination. Like washing the ashes to find the first glimmer of silver, this is the dawning of new consciousness. This is followed by the citronitas, the yellowing, where this new consciousness gains wisdom and maturity, like the rising sun. And finally, the process culminates in the rubedo, the reddening, the creation of the philosopher's stone, the union of opposites, the achievement of wholeness. For Jung, alchemy was the historical counterpart to his psychology of the unconscious. It showed that the journey toward wholeness was an archetypal process, discovered and rediscovered by seekers throughout the ages. Both synchronicity and alchemy point to the ultimate goal of the journey: the realization of the self. The self is the archetype of totality, the unified center of the personality that transcends the ego. To live from the self is to act from a place of deep inner authority and connection to the whole. It is to experience life not as a fragmented series of events, but as a meaningful, unified unfolding. This is the mastery of the path, not to eliminate the ego, but to place it in its proper service to the transcendent wisdom of the self, and to recognize that our individual psyche participates in the very fabric of a conscious, meaningful cosmos. What does a life lived in pursuit of individuation actually look like? What is the afterpicture of this profound transformation? It is crucial to understand that the result is not a state of perpetual bliss or a life free from problems. The goal is not to eliminate suffering, but to find meaning within it. The individuated person does not become perfect, they become whole. The first and most noticeable change is a shift from being reactive to being centered. The person is no longer a puppet of their unconscious complexes. When faced with a trigger that would have once sent them into a spiral of rage or anxiety, they now have a space for consciousness. They can recognize the old pattern rising, acknowledge the feeling without being possessed by it, and choose a more deliberate and constructive response. This brings a profound sense of inner freedom and authority. Life is no longer something that just happens to them. It is something they consciously participate in. Relationships are transformed. By withdrawing their projections, the individual begins to see others for who they truly are, not as screens for their own unacknowledged shadow or anima, animus. This allows for genuine intimacy and connection. They can accept the flaws in others, because they have learned to accept the darkness in themselves. Communication becomes more honest and direct, as they are no longer afraid of the emotions that conflict can bring up. They can be both compassionate and assertive, capable of deep love and firm boundaries. A wellspring of energy and creativity is unlocked. The immense psychic energy that was once spent on repressing the shadow and maintaining the persona is now liberated for life. This often manifests as a surge in creativity, not just in an artistic sense, but in the art of living itself. Life becomes more spontaneous, more playful, more vibrant. They find a renewed sense of purpose, not one dictated by society, but one that emerges from the authentic values of the self. There is a newfound resilience in the face of life's inevitable hardships. Loss, failure, and pain are still painful, but they no longer threaten to shatter the personality. The individuated person understands that these are necessary parts of life, the nigredo stages that precede renewal. They have built a psychological core, a connection to the self, that is beyond the reach of emotional entanglements and violent shocks. They have, in a sense, become psychologically unbreakable. Not because they are hard, but because they are flexible and whole. Perhaps, The most profound change is the development of a life-affirming attitude that embraces paradox. They can hold the tension of the opposites. They can be both strong and vulnerable, logical and intuitive, solitary and connected. They no longer see the world in rigid black and white terms, but in the rich, complex, and often ambiguous shades of reality. They are reconciled to themselves, warts and all, and in doing so, they become reconciled to the world. They live with a quiet sense of meaning, a feeling of being in the right place, not because life is perfect, but because they are finally, authentically, themselves. This is the treasure hard to attain, not gold, not power, not fame, but the simple, unshakable integrity of a whole and unified soul. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey, but at the beginning of another. To summarize the life and work of a figure like Carl Gustav Jung is to try and capture the ocean in a cup. He was a man who did not simply contribute to psychology. He redrew its maps, discovering entire continents within the human soul that were previously marked only as here be dragons. His legacy lives on, not just in the Psyche Jung Institute, founded in Zurich in 1948, but in the very language we use to understand ourselves. Concepts like extroversion and introversion, the archetype, the complex, and synchronicity have seeped so deeply into our cultural soil that we often use them without knowing their source. He was, without question, one of the giants of 20th century thought. But to truly honor the depth of Jung's work, we must do what he himself insisted upon. We must look at the whole picture, the light and the shadow. Jung was not a deified guru, but a complex and controversial character. His life, like all lives, contained its own profound paradoxes. During the rise of Nazism in the 1930s, as president of the International General Medical Society for Psychotherapy, he delivered a number of hotly contested views that led to him being wrongly, yet persistently, branded as a Nazi sympathizer. His personal life was equally complex. Happily married to Emma Rauschenbach, with whom he had 5 children, he also maintained a lifelong affair with his patient and colleague, Tony Wolff, once observing that the prerequisite of a good marriage is the license to be unfaithful. This was a man who lived the tension of the opposites he wrote about. A man who, in his quest for wholeness, did not shy away from the morally ambiguous and challenging aspects of his own nature. His mind never stopped seeking the symbolic meaning behind reality. In his later years, he turned his attention to the phenomenon of UFO sightings, not as a believer in extraterrestrial visitors, but as a psychologist seeing the emergence of a powerful modern myth of things seen in the skies, a projection of the collective psyche's anxieties and hopes in the nuclear age. To this day, the academic world continues a fascinating debate. Was Jung a true scientist, meticulously mapping the inherited structures of the mind, a sort of mental counterpart to DNA, or was he a modern mystic, a Gnostic sage, charting the ineffable geography of the soul? The truth, in a perfectly Jungian sense, is that he was not one or the other. He was the bridge between them. His entire life's work was an attempt to unite the world of biological fact with the world of spiritual experience, to show that they were not two separate realms, but different languages describing the same unified reality. Jung's life, with all its towering achievements and its human flaws, is perhaps the ultimate case study in the process of individuation he described. He did not preach from an ivory tower of perfection. He was a man who, after his necessary and painful break from his father figure, Freud, courageously undertook his own confrontation with the unconscious. He descended into the depths of his own soul, faced his own demons, conversed with his own inner figures, and returned with a map. That map, the body of work we call analytical psychology, is not the territory itself. It is not a doctrine to be blindly followed. It is an invitation. It is a set of tools. It is a testament to the fact that within every one of us lies a vast, unexplored world, rich with meaning, power, and the potential for a wholeness we can barely imagine. Healing our emotional wounds and integrating what we've repressed isn't just an act of personal transformation, it's an act of empowerment. It allows us to fully embody our truth, to shine in our authenticity, and to contribute more deeply to the world around us. Our presence becomes more impactful, more connected, more alive. And in all of this, we are reminded of the profound wisdom held within the human psyche, an inner knowing that, when listened to, can guide us through our darkest moments and into the light of our full potential. Each of us carries within us the capacity to evolve beyond limitation, to live a life of wholeness, to become not only healed, but truly empowered. Let this be a reminder, a call to return to ourselves, to stop running from what we feel, and to begin embracing our entire being. Because when we do, we don't just change our own lives. We help change the world. So now you know, according to Jung, repressing your emotions can have a profound impact on your emotional and psychological well-being. Thank you so much for watching me until the end of the video. If you related to what we talked about today, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss out on future videos like this one. Tell me in the comments, is there an emotion you've been holding back and would like to release? I'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation. Thank you so much for being here. See you soon for another video. Until then, take care of yourself, connect with yourself, and continue exploring your emotions.